So the talk is going to be about how to not trust hardware wallets. Out of the people here, who use the hardware wallet? Great, I'm going to go and attack your homes now. Who used the hardware wallet that's not in this picture? What was it? Which one? Keystone, yeah, okay. That's not a real normal one. But anyway, these are the main hardware wallets, and we're going to talk about it. So just was curious, like, where you guys stand on hardware wallets. If you don't know who we are and why you are here, let me remind you, this is the Bitcoinology meetup, and you can find us in these 4 places. You can find us on meetup.com. I mean, that's probably how you found the meetup in the first place. You can follow us on Twitter, because if you want to get notification when something is happening. And also we're on Mastodon, by the way. We're on Bitcoin Hackers, we're on NBK's instance and whatever. And also we have a YouTube channel, so most of the talks that we're going to have. Did I hear a boo? Jesus. Who do you work for? Anyway, so the thing is that we also have a YouTube channel where you can see the talks. And if you're seeing this on YouTube right now, hit those like, smash the like button, and all that stuff. Anyway, so moving on. My name is Alex Waltz, okay? I got into Bitcoin in 2012. I heard about Bitcoin on 4chan, if you can believe it. And over the years, I've been involved in various projects. In the first part, it was a lot of like mining projects and stuff like that. Then I dabbled with a few startups. And the most recent project, I had this boutique OTC shop here. It was called Ibex, and we used to sell Bitcoins to people. And I closed it down a year ago because it wasn't fun anymore. And you're going to see what I was up to in this talk in the last year and whatever. And yeah, I'm obsessed with entropy, and I'm going to tell you why. And by the way, I tweet a lot from @rawavocado, so you can follow me there. I mostly trigger people most of the time. And I also write, I have a website up, rawavocado.com, and I write about entropy things there in a very, I would say, odd style, so you should check that out. But anyway, I'm obsessed with entropy, right? So for the last 8 months of my life, I got obsessed with entropy. And if you don't know what entropy means randomness. So you might be like, well, what the fuck would anyone be interested in randomness? Because that's nothing. Well, it's because cryptography needs randomness. That's how you secure keys of any kind, right? So anything that uses cryptography, which is almost anything right now, you need randomness. And even more so, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, so obviously you need good quality entropy, right? And I got so caught up into this thing that made me build this weird device, which you probably don't know what this is, but this is a quantum random number generator, which means this is using nuclear radiation to generate Bitcoin keys. As you can see here, these are Bitcoin keys, they're just 24 words, and I made this device that records the movement of particles, how nuclear decay moves, how nuclear decay moves, and I use this to create Bitcoin seeds. There's a question?
Is it worth putting those 24 words into any hardware wallet?
The question was if it's worth putting it in a hardware wallet. Well, this is just a show-off science project, first of all, right? It isn't very practical, by the way, because, I mean, it's using radioactive materials, so I don't know if anyone would use this and whatever. But at the end of the talk, you should understand why I actually did this and what was the whole point of this, So, yeah. But anyway, I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the old adage. Adage is a fancy word for saying pretty much. That says be your own bank. That's what Bitcoin is about. And like being your own bank isn't just about like, being a teller and, being annoying and not having an answer for people. It's about more than that. First of all, a bank needs to take care of processing payments. So now if you are going to be a bank, you have to do this. And you can kind of solve this. I mean, if you have a node, that's what you're doing basically. You are processing the payment of you and everyone else. Well, that's a bit of a spoil. A second thing that the bank does, it does asset management. And you also have to take care of this if you're your own bank. But, if you bought Bitcoin, okay, if you bought Bitcoin, then you shouldn't worry about this. This is very bad what's happening here.
People on internet. Why are you offline?
Yeah, that's going to be a bit of a problem. But anyway, we'll face that later on. Another thing that a bank does, it secures money, okay? That's a very important thing it does. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but whenever someone constructs a bank, the first thing they design and they build is the bank vault, okay? And this is kind of a hard thing to do because, first of all, you have to get like one of those, big expensive doors to make sure no one can crack it. It has to be made of special alloys because if someone, tries to use like one of those blow torches, it needs to disperse the heat all over, so it makes it really hard for you to cut through it. Then you have to build the walls around it. We have to be made, out of concrete that's specially enforced with metal shading and stuff like this. And then you have to have people who do this and don't fuck you over. And then you need the alarm system, right, and all of this. So it's a pretty big deal. And this is what you are doing pretty much, right? And by the way, this is a very interesting picture over here. This is a bank vault in Hiroshima. So when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, this thing stood up, right? And well, okay, maybe the bomb dropped here or something. And the thing is that this stayed tall, and everything inside it was intact. Okay, so pretty much you're trying to get the same thing with this, with your hardware wallet, you know, because you're your own bank, you're storing your own bitcoins, and you're trying to get the same effect, right? And all you have is actually something like this, you know, and it's kind of hard to do this because, I mean, what the fuck are these even devices, right? Well, a Bitcoin wallet, it's a very specialized device, right? That does only one thing and one single thing. It's a Bitcoin wallet. And the reason you're doing this is because, you know, with doing less things, there are less things that could go wrong pretty much, right? And another interesting thing about these hardware wallets is they are built using microcontrollers. And microcontrollers are these very tiny computers, like this one over here. This is a microcontroller, and it's a very dumb computer, right? And the reason it's dumb is because there's no operating system or anything on this. It just has the specific Bitcoin operations that you need to run. And again, the reason you're doing this is because you want to eliminate every attack surface. So just less things that you have in the device and the software, less things could go wrong, right? And another important thing is that they're air-gapped, meaning that they're not connected to the internet, because the internet is a bad place. There's a lot of malware, there are a lot of things that could infect your wallet. So, you know, the hardware wallet just segregate this thing, right? There's no connection with the internet. So this really much should make like a hardware wallet, you know, an ideal Bitcoin wallet, right? Makes sense when you think about it. And okay, so how does a hardware wallet look like? Oh, sorry, you saw how one looks like. How does a hardware wallet work? Well, first of all, you create a transaction. Okay, that's the first step. And when you create a transaction, you can use this on your computer. This is not a sensitive operation. You just pretty much say, person A is going to send 1 Bitcoin to person B. Okay? So this is like you just write on a piece of, on a chip, like who is the sender and the receiver and the amount. So, you know, anyone can do this. This isn't sensitive. And the second part is that you have to sign this transaction, right? Because the Bitcoin network is going to look at the transaction. It's going to be, well, okay, cool. This person really owns the Bitcoin that they want to send, whatever. So then you have to take this transaction, which is pretty much a text file, you can say it as a text file, and you send it to the hardware wallet, right? And now the hardware wallet is going to sign this transaction. And it's going to do this by using the private key that is stored on your device, okay? And again, this is a sensitive operation. The first one was not a sensitive operation. You can do it anywhere. But this one is a sensitive operation. It happens in this very segregated, closed, you know, supposed to be secure space. Now, the result of this signature is going to be a different file. Now, this file isn't sensitive anymore, right? This is just the file with a signature. You can't modify anything with it because of mathematics, pretty much. And now you have to get this, you know, you have to send it somewhere else. So now, oh, I just noticed there's just 2 things. So now you take the signed transaction and you send it to the computer, right? And then you broadcast this to the network. Right, so that's how a hardware wallet works. Like it does the sensitive operation, which is pretty much the signing of the transaction and the key generation on the device itself, and then all the other parts are done, you know, outside, and then you broadcast it to the network, right? So again, as far as it goes right now, it seems pretty, you know, makes a lot of sense. Sure, this should be secure and whatever. But now this brings 2 big problems. First of all, how can I trust that the wallet is doing what it's supposed to do? I mean, you're gonna say the wallet is open source. I mean, still, but like, how can I trust? And even the more important question, how can I trust that the wallet that I have in my hand is actually the wallet I'm supposed to get, and it's also doing the things that it's supposed to do, you know? And this kind of brings like a pretty big problem when you think about it, because, well, you're supposed to get the bank vault that stays tall and whatever, and you have this very severe trust problems. And the thing is, like, hardware wallets are like the perfect target, okay? And they're the perfect target for 4 main reasons. First of all, Bitcoin is going to go up forever. Like, if you are a person who wants to steal something, there wouldn't be a better thing to steal on the planet, literally. It's like the best thing in the world, right? The second reason is, like, it's irreversible. Like, if you stole it from someone, they can't get it back. So you know, this is the second reason. The third reason is, like, if someone is using a hardware wallet, they're using that to secure what they consider a big amount of value. So if you hit this, you're going to get a lot of money for this. And the fourth one is pseudo-anonymous. And if you're a bit clever and you use joint market, you can probably get away with it, right? You can steal the money and no one would ever be to see it. And when you think about it, this kind of makes a lot of sense that everyone should start, you know, stealing Bitcoins from hardware wallets. But this is the reality, though. Like you are getting this device shipped to you in the mail, and all this is happening around, and you know, you're putting all your money in it. And the thing is, like, it's not just people who want to steal your money that would want to attack these hardware wallets. That's where it gets tricky. It could even be government entities, right? And now you're probably thinking, this guy's fucking paranoid, right? That never happened. Well, I also want to clarify a few other things. So there's 3 steps between you and your hardware wallet. This is you over there waiting for your hardware wallet to be shipped, right? And then, first of all, when these manufacturers, when they make these hardware wallets, they need to order that microcontroller, that special chip, the tiny computer, right? And they don't make these ones. They order it from another factory. So now when this is ordered in the factory, I mean, they don't know what people are doing there. I mean, you could, of course, look at it and inspect it, but, you know, someone there could, like, do some bad things to it, and it could fuck it up that in ways that it could never be detectable, right? And then, you know, 10 years down the line, you know, your Bitcoins disappear, and it's just because someone compromised this chip. So this is the first part, and this is the most likely, okay? Then something can happen midstream. Just one moment. Now, so the first part is upstream from the manufacturer, where hardware wallet can be compromised. More specifically, this chip. Then it's going to be during the manufacturing process, which is someone in the company is a rogue actor, and you know they can insert all kind of things there. They can replace things, or they can just send you a fake wallet. But this is probably the less likely. And then downstream, which is also pretty likely, is like, well, let's say everything is tip-top good to this point. Okay, so Weston has a question.
Can I ask you why you think the manufacturing is a lower risk than the upstream? If anything, I definitely would have argued the opposite.
Actually, yeah, you know why I say that is because I just felt like it would be easier to detect from them, because it's like, hey, you can point to this manufacturer. But actually, I think you're right. Maybe it wouldn't be a big risk.
Do you mean in terms of if they were lent on by, say...
Either way, I mean, say it's like Trezor, for example, or Ledger. I mean, I would have thought you could easily argue there's a risk upstream, with chip manufacturers, but it could be all microcontroller manufacturers. But it could be the company themselves as well. If anything, more likely, I think. But yeah, it could be external forces.
It
could be them themselves.
Pressure,
Or it could be people inside the company as well. Either way.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get to that, but you know that's actually a really valid point. So for the people listening, they were saying that actually I shouldn't say that it's less risky there. It's probably less risky or more risky, and that's a valid point. And then so now let's say everything here is just great, right? Like nothing happened at this point, everything is fine, and now they ship a device to you. Well, if someone intercepts that device, I mean, they know it's sent from the company that makes hardware wallets, you know? They could just, replace it with a rogue device. And even if you're an expert, okay? Even if you're an expert, you're not gonna be able to tell this, you know? So when you think about it, it's a pretty scary thing. And by the way, all these manufacturers, they like, it's like, oh, we sealed it with a plastic bag. It's like, dude, are you serious? I'll probably do a meetup like how you can compromise plastic bags, actually. It's really more easy than you think. It really is. So it's just a false sense of security. So, so now all of these things would be like if someone tries to compromise them, if they want to steal your Bitcoins. But there are also state actors that might want to compromise. I mean, they're thinking, this guy's paranoid, and it's like, that never happened, right? Like, what would that ever happen? And let me bring you to the example of Crypto AG. Crypto AG is this US company that was founded in the 1950s, okay? And this company used to sell secure communication hardware, right? And you sell to governments. And they were selling to 130 countries in the world. They had 90% of the market share, okay? That's how crazy it was. And all the top governments were buying from it. Now, this company was founded by this guy called Boris Hegelin, okay? And he ended up being good buddies with William Friedman. William Friedman is actually the first person who was the chief cryptologist of the NSA. And in 1953, because they were good buddies, the guy said, hey, look, listen, what do you say we have a gentleman agreement, okay? Where the people who are not allies of the United States, you don't sell good hardware to them, okay? You just don't sell them good hardware. And by the way, if you think this is like some, this is some tinfoil hat bullshit or something like that, this has been declassified. That's how we know this. The documents have been declassified, and it's pretty obvious, right? So this is like, okay, this is concerning, but not at bad. Now, here's where it gets super fucking crazy, okay? Here's where it gets crazy. Come on, can I have been a better moment for this to... all right. You're getting a spoiler right now. But anyway, okay, so now in so the company was founded in the 1950s, and in 1970, the guy stepped down from the company, okay? And what ended up happening, the CIA and the BND, the BND is the CIA equivalent for Germans, right? They said, like, we want to buy this company. I was like, what? He's like, they literally bought this company 50-50, okay? And they own the company, and then they use dummies companies to control this company and insert backdoors, okay? So the NSA and the CIA were using this company called Intercom Associates, and they were they were using this for Motorola, and they were telling Crypto AG what backdoors to insert and who to spy on. And BND was doing this for Siemens. Again, this is declassified. This isn't like, you know, some kind of like, oh, why did this happen? This has happened for real, okay? So this is how it happens. So if you ever were thinking like, oh, why would backdoors ever exist, or like, did backdoor ever exist? From the first day they started being commercially available, secure communication software was commercially available, someone started to insert backdoors. And I know what you're probably thinking is like, well, even so, I mean, would they even try to attack me? Also, another thing to mention is that there's the famous Snowden leaks, by the way. And I don't know if you know what this was, but Snowden exposed these documents which show that the NSA spent $259 million in 2013 to weaken encryptions. And what they do is they try in any way possible. They try to have contracts with big tech companies. They try to insert backdoors. They do anything you can imagine. Okay, and again, these are top secret leaked documents. And now you're probably thinking, well, okay, fair enough, sure, but like if these guys spent $254 million on compromised things, why would they even try to steal my bitcoins? Right? That doesn't make any sense. Well, the point isn't that they would try to steal your bitcoins. Okay, the point is that these backdoors exist. Okay, this is pretty well known fact. And if these backdoors exist, they have someone else can try to use them, okay? So you might, pretty much all the hardware we're probably using has some form of backdoors and things like this. And especially hardware wallets would be a really good reason to think. Now, here's where it gets even a bit more weird. The thing is like all the major hardware wallets on the market, and this is the Trezor, the Ledger, the Bitbox, the Cold Card, and the JADE, all of them use the same microcontroller from the same company, the STM32, okay? So if you would like be like a government, you're like, you know what? We're gonna go and try to convince people to backdoor the device. You literally go to one company, which is also a Swiss company, and you tell them to backdoor it. So it's crazy when you think about like you literally get 99.9% of the market share of hardware wallets if you do this. So when you think about it and when you look like this, it's like these are pretty risky devices, you know? Now the thing is like, okay, so what is the solution then? Well, the solution is be paranoid, okay? And there's two ways you can be paranoid. Generate your own entropy, which means generate your own private keys, right? Because they're two sensitive operations. Remember, there's the private key part, right? Which is when you generate it. So be paranoid and do that yourself, don't trust any hardware. And use general purpose hardware, okay? Now, we're gonna cut this off in the video so it looks like it was very like, okay. All right. Now the thing is like general purpose hardware. So what does this actually mean, general purpose hardware? The thing is like at the beginning, I know I told you that the reason these hardware wallets are good is because they're very specialized, right? But that also makes them a target. But the reason why these hardware wallets were like good to be secure was because they only do one thing and don't do other things. Well, the same thing you can do, you can use a general purpose hardware like a laptop, okay, or a Raspberry Pi or something like this, and use that only for Bitcoin operations, and you'll get the same benefit. But there's even a better option. Does anyone know what this is? Yeah, this is a SID Center. So this is a hardware wallet. It's a DIY hardware wallet that is actually made from a Raspberry Pi. So the thing is, like, what happens here is that you buy all these components off the shelf or from the internet, okay? So you can go to a shop, buy them with cash. No one would ever know that you use this Raspberry Pi for Bitcoin stuff. Like, Raspberry Pis are used for anything you can imagine. Especially this model that I have in this picture here doesn't have any Wi-Fi, so it's also air-gapped. So you go in and you buy all these components off the shelf yourself, right? Where there's any chance someone can suspect this is going to be used for Bitcoin operations, and you put it together, and you're going to have to burn the software on it, which is at SD card there, and there you go. You have a Bitcoin wallet that uses general purpose hardware. Now, the truth is that this one is a bit finicky to use, and it uses some QR codes and whatever, but this would be a solution, okay? This would be the easiest solution. And by the way, I wrote a very lengthy article about this thing, how to assemble it, how to do everything. You find it on my website. And I kind of became a fanboy of the device, to be honest. I like it quite a lot. Then the second option is the Spectre DIY hardware wallet. This one would be a bit easier to use because it looks like a mobile phone and it has like, has a proper touchscreen and everything. But by the way, this one also uses the STM32 microchip, okay? But the Raspberry Pi, it doesn't use this. It uses that chip there, which I don't know what it is. It's probably also ARM chip or something. Anyway, it doesn't use the same one that everyone else uses. Okay, so this would be an option. But then the best option, if you ask me, which is the hardest to use, is simple. Go and buy a laptop with cache, okay, from Gumtree or from whatever you want, and burn Tails on it and use Tails. Does anyone know what Tails is?
It's the amnesiac something.
Okay, so we know who bought drugs off the internet. That's what we're going to So Tails is this really weird operating system which runs on a USB stick. So you burn on a USB stick, and everything that has to do with this operating system is on the USB stick in your RAM. Okay, so once you pull out this USB stick, everything gets deleted, right? And another interesting thing about this is that you can. Another important part is that it comes installed with an Electrum wallet, which is a Bitcoin wallet. So you can. So the process would be the following: you get a laptop, you can even get it new. You can get it from somewhere else. You can eliminate all the electronics you have from it, like Wi-Fi and all the radio stuff. And after that, you will just use this operating system and generate your private key. And there you go. You don't have to worry about the NSA and whatever, having backdoors in your hardware wallet. But now the thing is that this sounds all good and whatever, but how does this actually work? And what does it even mean to generate your private keys? Like, first of all, what is a private key? And I say a private key is like a needle in a haystack. Okay. But actually, a private key is pretty much a really big and random number. So why is it actually a number? Well, it's a number because it's something on a computer. So anything that is on a computer is a number. From dick pics to important documents or dick pics or whatever, right? Now, the reason it's really big is, let's say my private key is a number between 1 and 10. All right? If one of you guys would want to guess my private key, you have a 1 in 10 chance. Like, that's very awful. Like, 1 in 10 chance isn't really bad. And even if you're a bit zealous, by the way, you can go through all the possibilities like in no time, and you just guess my private key. So that's why the private keys is a really big a number. Now, the thing is, like, if my private key would be a number between 150 quadrillion, this would be different. Now, what is 150 quadrillion? That is 2 to the power of 256. And to bring that into perspective, that is roughly 10 to the power of 77, which means it's a 1 followed by 77 zeros. And if you think that number is not big enough because you can write it on paper, that's literally how many atoms there are in the universe. And to bring it even more into perspective, like if we would use all the hardware that exists on the planet, literally anything, including, smart dildos and everything else that exists, and computers and toasters and everything we have, if you use all of this together to crack a Bitcoin private key, it would take 500 million years. Right? So that's how big this number is. And the reason it's random is because, even though this number is big, you don't want someone to just like use the specific date of someone and guess the private key. So the reason I say this is like a needle in the haystack is because the size of the key is analogous to the size of the haystack, pretty much, right? So imagine it's like the key space, all the key space is like this really big haystack. But a haystack is so fun, and where you put the key, that is the position of the key is the private key. But this is so fucking big that I go in this haystack somewhere at random, I leave my private key here, and I could spend all my life to look around to find another private key. And the chances is almost zero that I'm not gonna find one, right? So it's kind of crazy when you think about it, but that's literally, like, probably half of the security of Bitcoin comes from just this very weird statistical mathematical fact. So that's why Bitcoin keys are secure, just because they're big, and are so crazy big. All right, well, okay, can someone tell me which one of these is a private key? Last one. Why did you say it's last one?
I just remember a lot of private keys.
Right.
The primary one.
Why did you say it's the first one?
The binary one was a private key that it's from binary, we hash it into the numbers you like.
Okay. You also want to say something?
They might all be private keys, but just encoded in different ways.
Okay, so someone said the last one because it has a 5. Someone said the first one because it's binary. Someone here said that they may all be the same thing. And the answer is they're all the same thing, actually. Okay, they're all exactly the same thing. But why are they written in all these different forms? So the thing is, like, the way computers work, they work with zeros and ones, okay? So if you would, like, literally look in a computer's head, it just sounds so stupid, but if you would do that, that's what you would have. You would have a bunch of zeros and ones. Remember, the dick pic is a 0 and 1, right? So, and then the thing is, like, this could be encoded in different ways. And one way you can encode it is in hexadecimal. And hexadecimal is pretty much the same way, like, the same way as decimals, the same numbering system that we use as humans. But there's one key difference. It has extra digits. Anyway, just to make it simpler, it's just a different way that's a bit more compact in some cases. And the last one here, you can, first of all, you couldn't know the two of them were private keys. Like anything could have been encoded there. But the last one was a private key. And the reason for that is because this one is using wallet import format, which pretty much means that there's some standards, okay, that people say, hey, we're gonna take this 0 and 1 things. We're gonna do some very specific operations on them. And at the end, all the private keys are gonna start with a 5, and they're gonna have an error correction. Which means pretty much that if you type this out, which I don't know why anyone would ever do that, that's a dumb thing. But if you were to do that for some reason, and you mess up something at the end, you could tell. Because the key, it has in itself error correction. And we're going to talk about this a bit later and how that is achieved. But anyway, now,
Alex,
yes?
how would they manage to stick sample in there? Or is that just...
Just to make sure it's not real, I think. I don't notice that.
Right, okay.
Well, first of all, very, very observant, by the way. Yeah, someone observed over here that it says sample. This is just like, just to not use and whatever. And they put it like this on the wiki and I copy it from there. Sorry?
The underscore is more unusual, isn't it?
Which one is the underscore?
Underscore.
Yeah, that should have also been.
The thing is, there's a long-standing history of people using example keys in documentation for Bitcoin wallets or people losing all their money, or lots of money, because they don't know why people do this, but they see a key, they use a key. And then people, seriously, people have lost money. Most of the time it's like testnet and stuff, but people have actually lost real money like that. That's why any people that remember end up writing like Bitcoin software, do not use a real private key in your documentation. Even if you don't have any money in it, don't put it in the documentation because somebody will screw up.
Yeah, so that's pretty much why this is like this. You see, I was cautious. I just copied it off Bitcoin.wiki. But anyway, okay, I mean, I could tell no one understood what I was talking about. It was pretty obvious. Alright, okay, we're back on track. Forget us happened. Okay, that was a half-ass clap if I ever saw one. Anyway, okay. So I just told you that, you take this weird zeros and ones, right? You do some magical math on it, and then you end up with an address. So how does this actually look? There's this website called Graphical Address Generator, right? Which is a pretty cool website. And you're gonna see here, remember how I said the private key could be 1? This is 1. It's not actually 1 because it hashes, but for this example, it's fine. Think about it as. So what happened here is that I put 1. There's this mathematical operations being done here. This is the little curve part stuff, and this is the encoding and whatever of the public key. And then you end up with an address. And now the thing is, every time you change here, you get a different address, right? So pretty much this is what you need to do is very simple. You need to come up with whatever is going to come in this box here. Make sure no one wants to use it, right? Because this is your private key. And then a wallet is going to take care of the other parts, okay? So that's what I was kind of explaining earlier with a lot of fails. Anyway,
that process was responsible for an awful lot of lost coins, by the way.
What process?
The process of taking some string, hashing it once with SHA-256, and generating the private key from that. So many coins were lost by people just using some random string from Wikipedia or from a dictionary or something.
Not random.
Yeah, exactly, not random enough, exactly, not properly random. And then just always using the same simple technique of SHA-256.
So what is Waxwing saying here?
Sorry.
Okay. No, but that's a very valid point. Let's explain. So the thing is, as you notice, the reason why things get jumbled here is after I put a 1, there's a SHA going on here, right? There's a hash function going on here. Which what the SHA function does, it takes something and it scrambles it in a really big way. It always spits up something that's really big. Okay, that's what this does. And now you could see, and actually this is actually what ends up being used as the private key, right? And people think, well, that looks pretty random to me, and that's a big number, so that must be safe. But then again, if you right here, I don't know, a lyric from a song or something, someone else is gonna be like, well, I'm curious if someone ever wrote the lyric from a song there and got this hash and whatever. And that happened a lot. I mean, there could be a separate talk just on compromising wallets like that and brand wallets and whatever. But that is a very valid point. And also, you're going to see that this isn't used. This is still used because this is how addresses work. That's how Bitcoin works. But we have something else right now, so we shouldn't necessarily worry about this for now. But yeah, that was actually a valid point. So the key takeaway here is that you take something that is jumbled up, okay? You do some fancy math, and you end up with some addresses over there, okay? And what you need to remember from here is that this is one way, meaning that if you go on the blockchain and you see an address over there, you can't guess someone's private key, right? Like that would defeat the purpose. And another thing is you can prove ownership, which means that you have this jumbled up thing, right? And because you use this specific math on it, you can say like, hey, this is mine. Or actually, the way I should have phrased it should have been that you have control over the address. Okay, this is done in a way where you have control over the address. That's what I'm trying to say here, meaning that you can send bitcoins out of it. Okay, and if you go on the blockchain, this is how this looks like. Okay, this is just the Bitcoin blockchain. So this is the Bitcoin blockchain. So if you look here, you just see different addresses which you don't know what it means. So this is how it would be an exterior view on what we just talked about. Now an interior view on what we talked about is this. And I mean, it should be pretty obvious what is happening here, but I'll just kind of explain. So on the, I hope I didn't open some porn or something by mistake. Anyway, so on the left over here, you have a bunch of addresses, right?
Worse than porn, this is showing your private keys in public.
Oh, it gets even more technical, don't worry about it. So this isn't even the beginning. But anyway, so the thing is like over here you have like the addresses, and here you have the private keys. Okay? They all look like nonsense because they pretty much are nonsense. But this is what you see in a wall. Okay? You have the private keys on one part, the addresses on one part and the private keys on the other part. Okay? So pretty much, should be more visually appealing. If you wanted to back up a wallet in the old days, okay, you would have to back up each individual private keys for each address, okay? So you can see here there's the box like they're all separate. And now, I mean, this means when you have to back up your wallet, you had 100 backups, okay? And even more than that. Then even if you didn't use any address, maybe you posted it somewhere, someone's gonna send money to it. So you have a lot of things to back up at this point, okay? And then people are like, you know what, maybe we can do better. And in 2012, Gregory Maxwell and Peter Lloyd, but who here knows who are these people?
No.
Okay, cool. Anyway, so this guy, the guy with the longer beard on the left, actually wrote this Bitcoin post. That's what this guy does. He wrote Bitcoin post, and then people use that in Bitcoin. That's pretty much what he does for a living. And he did this post about deterministic wallets, and then the other guy there on the right, he formalized it into a bit. And this made things easier. And how did it make it easier? They thought about it like this. So remember how we take this private key and we do some math and we get these addresses over here? He was like, why don't we just have one simple secret over here? We do a bunch of extra math, and then from there we generate all these things here. So right now what we ended up having is like the old model was where we would have to back up. We would have to back up all the keys. We would have 100 backups here. Now we have this model where we back up only one single thing. Okay, so this is what Bitcoin 2 did. And now this is an improvement, and this is starting kind of to look like what you probably used in Bitcoin wallets. It starts to look familiar, but we're not quite there yet. Then in 2013, these people who pretty much, most of them, well, half of them work at Slash Pool. They said, like, I think we can do better. Okay, I think we can actually make this even better. And we have a secret right now, but this secret that we have, instead of 100 secrets, it's actually still a big number. It's one of these things over here. It's not exact that, but it's kind of like a question.
I just have to interrupt. It's only fair. Thomas Vertling actually invented the idea of the seed phrase before Bit39. There was a huge argument. He's the guy behind Electrum. There was a huge argument between him and these guys. They introduced the standard Bit39, which actually ended up getting adopted, and he didn't like Bit39 for obscure technical reasons. But it's only fair because historically he invented the idea, not these guys.
Wow, I had no clue about that. Because I always so Waxman said that actually it was the guy, Thomas, the guy from Electrum who came up with this idea, and not the people. These guys are the one who are credited for the bit, by the way.
The bit is what I'm saying,
yeah. But
he doesn't like Bit39.
If you ever use the Electrum, they have their own scheme of doing, right? And I guess
they later introduced Bit39 just by force of everyone else using it, but originally he had his own scheme. Or whatever, it doesn't matter. So what Waxman is saying here is that this scheme that I'm going to present here that makes things even easier. There was this other guy who actually came up with it earlier, and correct would be to say he invented it. So and I didn't read it, and that's news to me. So okay, all right. Well, so then what this guy who didn't invent this came up with, but this is what we're using right now. They said, so the bearded guys before, they said like, hey, let's have one secret to generate all the other things.
And these guys said like, well, this secret is still like a number like this one. It's as big as the keys, right? It's just one main key that you generate child keys from it. And this doesn't really look that good because, I mean, again, the best thing we have is from 0, 0, 0 to this thing. So they were like, you know what? How about this? Sounds like a crazy idea, but just go with me. Why don't we take that big number that we have here, and we just group 11 per row. We just take all the zeros in one, and we put 11 on a row, 11 on a row, 11 on a row, okay? And then they were like, you know what? Listen, why don't we transform this in like normal numbers that humans use, which is pretty much like decimal numbers. And I don't know, well, it's pretty easy how this is done, and it's not important how it's done, but you should get the idea, right? So you take the zeros and ones that the machine uses, you arrange them in 11 per row, and then you convert them into decimal numbers. Looks familiar so far? And then you get these words. So now the question is, how did you get these words, right? I'll tell you how you get these words. I'll share right now. They made a list of words, 248 words, okay? And this list, it's kind of important that we all use the same list when we're doing this, right? So, you know, so you don't like, you know, end up having different keys. I mean, we should have different keys, but not using different standard. Okay, anyway. So the thing is, like, we ended up having this, we ended up having these numbers here, right? And this is 1, 5, 1, 7, 5, 6. So what they did, it was that they just looked at what is the 1,756 word, and they just said, okay, well, that's what we're going to use here, okay? And they did this for all these words. So again, what we did here to make this more pleasant, I forgot to mention one thing. So we took the zeros and ones, we convert them in decimal numbers in what humans use, and then we just go and check that list and you know, we select the word. But now, if you see here, we have 23 words over here, right? We have 23 words because 256 divided by 11 is going to leave a reminder, okay? And we over there we have three zeros and ones over here, but we need 8 more. So how do we get the 8 more? Well, the way we get the 8 more is that we're gonna hash all the words that we have, okay? And take the first 8 bits from there. So that's how we get a 24th word, okay? Anyway, maybe this isn't necessarily that important how technically it's done, but the idea is that this also has error correction. So like if you ever imported a seed in a wallet, if you messed up a word, the wallet is gonna be like, hey, this isn't correct. So this is how the wallet knows that, all right? It's because it has this error correction thing. But anyway, to bring this home, everything that I explained, maybe I should just use this website from the beginning, can be seen over here. So you have all the 24 things here, and you just pick a 0 or 1, right? And you can see how the number changes here and the word changes. So this is how this works. If you ever use the words, this is what is actually happening in the background, okay? And as you notice, like when I change this, when I change 1 bit here, it's not just this word on the 18th row changing, it's also the last one, because that is the hash of the whole thing, right? Anyway, this is how this works, pretty much. So, in case you just wanted to see how it really works. So now you're probably thinking, Jesus, if I want to be paranoid, do I have to go through all these things and whatever? Well, kind of and kind of not. But anyway, the point is that what they did with this bit 39.2 is like you take 24 words, you generate that main secret that you had, and then you generate all these keys and whatever, right? So this is a very big improvement. So why did I went through all this very long thing? Is because if you want to be paranoid, okay, and if you don't want to trust any hardware and eliminate any possibility of anything going wrong, I mean, this is a pretty good presumption. Your Bitcoin, you know, maybe used 10 years from now or something, you can pass it on to your heirs or whatever. So I don't think this is like necessarily, I mean, this extra step I think makes sense. You have to generate the 24 words, right? You have to do everything I explained here. And it's not as hard as doing anything, though. That's the good part about it. Now we're going to see. And we have a break now. Okay, so the thing is like, a private key, I said it's this thing, I know. A private key is just it's pretty much a bunch of spaces, 256 spaces, where you have to put a 0 or a 1, okay? That's pretty much it. So now, and it has to be random. So now you might be thinking, well, why don't I put those things in myself? And let me tell you what. First of all, everyone get on this website right now. Scan this QR code and get on this website. It's a fun game. It's not going to steal your Bitcoins. Yeah. So yeah. So come on, everyone get on this website. I'll click on it also if you don't, you know. This is the website. Just scan the QR code.
Well, this one.
Oh, sorry. My bad. I thought. Okay, sorry. So the QR here. Everyone just scan the QR code.
Are you going to give everyone coins?
No, it's not. I'm gonna make you feel bad about yourself. Literally, this is what this website is.
53% is smart as shit.
Okay, so then everyone scan the website, yeah? Okay, so what this website does, it pretty much is very simple. It's a game. You have to press left or right, okay? And the computer is trying to guess what you have, okay? So the way you beat the computer is if you get more than 50%, okay? So just keep doing this for a while. Just keep doing this.
If you just press one side, it keeps going up.
Well,
That's the point.
yeah, that's the whole point.
Wow.
So you are trying to put in here an unpredictable pattern, okay? You are trying to pretty much produce randomness. And the website is looking at the strokes you did before and is trying to guess what you do in the future. Okay, so why don't you just tell me what scores you get? What do you have? 64. 51. 57. 100, okay. Wow. 57.
You don't win a prize for 100, I'm sorry.
That's not how this works, by the way. Yeah, let's hear other numbers. Come on, what do you have there?
79.
There's some people there, yeah?
70.
Okay.
73.
Okay. No, you didn't even. Okay, gotcha. You're very privacy concerned. Got it. Any numbers there? Who else has numbers then? 64.
79.
All right. Okay. So just to make it clear, 50-50 is like the midpoint, right? So you're not winning. So 60% isn't that good. So the whole point of this is that to show that you guys all suck at entropy. Humans, not you guys in this room. Humans suck at entropy. You know, it's actually better when the whole group that you are a part of sucks at something than you specifically. But the point is like you can't like this. This is a very dumb program that runs on a website, and this program managed to tell after just a few tries what you were gonna do. And if you want to get actually very technical, and maybe I'll explain this afterwards because it's very interesting how it works. It creates. I said it's not gonna be technical. It creates these graphs here, and it figures out what you're gonna do. It's right. Okay, let's get back to the presentation.
I need just going to say, the reason 100 is if you just keep pressing one direction, right, it just keeps.
Yeah, it's called being predictable, yes. So you should never generate private keys, by the way. Okay, done with the website. Stop playing with the website. You're not going to do that. Privacy better, okay? So let's get back here. Now, the thing is, like, you know, when you realize this, oopsie, sorry, well, when you realize this, is that actually,
No, let's all just look at this one.
okay, wait a second. So the thing is, like, when you realize this, you know, you start thinking, like, well, okay, I suck pretty much at randomness, so, like, what are you gonna use for randomness, right? Like, what is random in the first place to put inside there? And this actually reminds me of this quote that this hooker actually once told me in Chinatown, by the way. She said, all the effects of nature are only mathematical consequences of small numbers of immutable laws. I'm not kidding, it's not a hooker. It's actually Simon Laplace who said this. He's a famous mathematician, whatever. But the point is that actually, this is actually a very profound statement when you think about it, right? Well, everyone just dropped their faces when I mean a hooker, and I can't believe it. So, but it's a very profound statement about the world when you think about it. Because he's actually saying that there's nothing random here. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Like, there's a ball here, you kick it with your leg, and it's going to kick the other thing, and so on and so forth. And wherever you go outside your universe, this is what it happens, and this is life. And, well, wait a minute, I'm supposed to get something random for the security of my Bitcoin. So what would I do? Well, I'll tell you what I did, okay? I like to go full crocodile all the time. So I said, like, well, is there actually something that really is completely non-deterministic, completely random? And the answer is yes. And that is nuclear decay. So the thing is, like, there's some substances in our reality, like this table, which is pretty stable. Like, nothing happens to it. But there's some other substances that just once in a while, a small bit of it just wanders up for no particular reason. Well, it's not actually true, but you can kind of see that it just wanders up. And the crazy part is that there's no way in the how to figure out when the next one is going to be, all right? There's a 50-50% chance that one might that one of them is gonna like spun off now, or in the next minute, or so on and so forth. So this is pretty much the most random thing we have in the world. This is purely random, right? And this is, you know, the famous thing when Einstein said that God doesn't play dice and all that, right? So then I was like, you know what? This is actually a cool thing, but I mean, how could you actually measure radioactive decay? Because this sounds kind of science fiction. Like, who is going to be able to do this? And it turns out actually you can buy this device off Amazon, and it's going to measure nuclear radiation. And it turns out there's nuclear radiation all around us. Like, well, first of all, there's just everything is radioactive in here everywhere, people and whatever. But like when we had the Big Bang, right? It's like it made a big splash, right? And it's like this echo that you see, and that's radioactive echo, if you will. And you can measure this with this device. And this is actually random. This is purely random, right? So I was like, okay, this is cool, but actually, I wonder if I could get some radioactive materials from somewhere. That would be pretty cool to do. And I realized that actually all the alarms have radioactive materials inside them. Literally radioactive material. It's going to be illegal. I don't know. But you can buy it off Amazon. So I opened this up, okay? And
Those are alpha emitters, right?
those are alpha emitters. Yeah, they should be less dangerous.
The meter you showed specifically said beta and gamma and X-ray dosimeters.
Yeah, I didn't find another picture. I'm sorry.
Different meter, right?
Yeah. Well, no, the meter actually measures all of them, the one I have. It's just an Amazon picture, but it definitely measures all of them. And I ended up getting this, and this smidge over here, this thing that you see here, this is proper radioactive material, okay? And this is random. So the way this thing decomposes is random. Like, again, all the scientific things that we figure out right now, we can't figure out how this is going to behave. So I got my hands on this thing, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I hooked up this device to the computer, right? And I started, so what this device does is whenever a particle like spuns out from there, it just goes like beep, 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 right? So the things that we don't know what's gonna happen, the random part, is the times between those beeps. So I just opened Audacity and I started recording this thing, right? And the time between those things, this is perfectly random. And then I even draw this diagram here. So every time you see a line, that's a particle, okay? And it takes, I did a math, it takes pretty much 44 particles for me to get one Bitcoin word, okay? And I did this, and then this is how it looked like. And it says here this is very high radiation, and it's probably dangerous, you know, so you shouldn't like do this at home, by the way, but I did it. So I had radioactive material, I connected that to my audio device over there, which is the same thing I record podcasts with, and there's a Raspberry Pi there, and I wrote this Python script afterwards that does everything I just told you, and there you go. I just used radioactive decay to generate my Bitcoin seeds, like literally, the most random thing in the universe. And it's kind of cool.
You go 4 letters for each word, right?
What's that?
You go 4 letters each time.
The words are...
The word
It doesn't matter.
that you only need the first 4 letters.
Yeah.
To determine.
But anyway, so the point is like, I also wrote a Twitter thread about it. It got very famous. It got a few likes, and people started saying I'm smart and whatever. So it felt really cool and whatever, right? And you know, they were sending all kind of weird gifs and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Fuck you, Einstein. You said God doesn't play dice. Take that. I used the quantum dice to generate my keys. And I was very proud of myself. And then I realized, like, I mean, this is good and all, but this isn't fucking practical. Like, who's gonna go and get radioactive materials to generate Bitcoin private keys? But yeah?
I will.
Oh, you were? Okay, maybe we can work out a deal later on. And then I was like, okay, true, but you know what, actually, like, forget about this. I mean, this was fun and whatever. It was a cool thing to show off, but this isn't practical. So remember, we actually needed to get, we have 256 spaces, and in each space we have to put a 0 or 1. So why don't we just use a coin toss? Like, that's pretty random. That's actually pretty easy to get for everyone. But now I was like, okay, but like, is a coin toss actually really that random? Like, how random is a coin toss? I mean, everyone thinks it's random, but did you ever prove it, or did you ever do anything like this? And it turns out there's this guy, Percy Diaconis. This is an interesting character, by the way. This guy, when he was 14 years old, he ran away from home to study with a magician. And then he went to college, and he became a famous statistician. And most of his work has to do with, you know, studying from a mathematical point of view, how dice, cards, and all these things behave, right? And he writes this paper called The Dynamical Bias of a Coin Toss, where he analyzes this. He literally tries to do a rigorous mathematical analysis of how good a coin toss is, which is exactly what I'm trying to figure out for the Bitcoin private keys. And first of all, he built this machine which actually every time, if you put a coin like that, it flips it, you get the same result every time. So 100 out of 100 times, if you flip it like this, you get heads every time. So this pretty much should bring in the context that the coin toss isn't random. It isn't like nuclear decay. Like, it's just a physical object, you know, and it goes up and down, but it's deterministic, right? But so then if this is the case, is it still random? Should I use it actually for Bitcoin private keys? Well, the thing is, like, how can we think about a coin toss? We have this chart over here, right? And on the OY axis over here, we have how many times it spins. And on the OX axis over here, we have how many times it spins in the air. So you have a coin toss, right? You do this, it spins a number of times, right? And then it's gonna go down. And depending on how many times it's gonna spin, you're gonna get heads or tail, right? And the reason why you have these lines here with different colors is that pretty much you're gonna end up realizing that under this chart, under this line over here, the coin spins only once. In the next one, it spins twice, 3 times, 4 times, and whatever, right? It kind of makes sense, right? It's like, I mean, you can spin a coin that only spin once, spin twice, and whatever, right? And now, what is the point of this graph here? Well, what does this make any sense? How does this even prove this is random? And anyway, so the point is, like, if you have a point over here on the chart, right? It means that we had a coin that spent 35 seconds in the air, which would be crazy, and spin 200 times, right? That's what we're checking.
35 hundredths of a second. It says 70 seconds.
Actually, that's correct. Yes, you're right. So now the thing is, like, how can we prove this is random? Now let's say right now I'm sitting over here and I have a dart, okay? And I need to throw a dart over there. Now I'm not a really good dart player. I never played darts, and I don't think darts is a sport. I mean, fat people play darts, so it's clearly not a sport. But the thing is, like, if I sit over there, I could probably hit the blue one, right? I'm pretty confident I can do that. Now, if we make it even smaller, I could probably still do a good job. But if we go even further, now it starts to get tricky. And now even more, when we get here, I don't know, maybe, but at this point, it's pretty much 50-50, right? I mean, who the fuck knows? And the thing is, like, this is exactly what is happening here. This is exactly what we see in this area over here. This is what happens. These alternating areas become pretty much like this thing. And there's this mathematician called Harry Poincaré who actually proved that after the more smaller this areas becomes, it's a 50-50 chance which is going to fall. Like, it's a mathematical proof, right? It's not just us thinking a coin is random. So this is exactly what is happening here. As you can see on this side of the chart, this becomes smaller and smaller, but it happens over here. So this is kind of like, okay, that's cool. You can kind of prove, like, you know, a coin is mathematically random. Like, I kind of knew that. But this makes me, you know, more assured about using it for Bitcoin private keys. But then again, what this guy did in this paper, he started measuring these things. So over there on the right side is Percy, and over here is Alex. And he measured the coins, and he said, like, a coin usually goes like about 30 centimeters up in the air. It spends about half a second in the air, and it spins between 36 and 40 times. And the speed is between 7 and 9 feet per second. So I also did experiments, and I got the results 46, 06, 38, and whatever. But now, the thing is, like, it's kind of tricky to measure this, right? And how do you do this? So the first thing I did is I filmed myself with my camera 100 frames per second. I have a stopwatch over there, and I have that thing. And I did this probably like about 100 times. Okay? So this is how I wanted to measure it. First of all, how can I trust what the guy says if I don't replicate his experiments, right? And as you can see, I wasn't that much off. I mean, I wasn't that much off, right? But now the thing is, like, how many times he spins in here? This was a bit of a more tricky one. And he also had a very creative idea. So he took a coin. He took one of those dental floss. This is me anyway, but I got it from him. I took it, and I took a 10p coin, and I super glued it there. Okay? 1 second, you're gonna see this. Alright? And then what I ended up doing is that I spin the coin like that, and then turn around and see how many times the coin spun in the air. Right? So I did this, and I managed to measure how they spin, you know? And now, so first of all, I was pretty certain about what this guy said. The experiments kind of made sense. And then there were a few conclusions that he had about coin tosses, right? First of all, if you have a coin and you leave it to spin on a table, you can have a bias of 80-20%. So if you ever want to, like, you know, use a coin for something and you want to do this, don't let it do this. Don't let it fall down. Because when this happens, it's gonna have a bias of 80-20 for some point, right? This is the first takeaway. The second takeaway is like, if you start off with heads, it has a 51% chance, not a 50% chance, to also end up the same thing, which is like, okay, fair enough, who cares?
Why is that?
What?
Why is that? What's the cause of that?
It just has to do with the mechanics of how the coins do, and he said like in the paper like it's just the starting position has a 51% chance of appearing.
Is it because also, I guess, maybe the right hand is...
No, I mean the way this is described is like there's like 12 parameters. It's a 12-dimensional program, and he took all these parameters and he did the measurements and he proved it mathematically with a lot of integrals and stuff like that. And he reached his conclusion. But now here's a very interesting point actually, because so like let's say right now you're like, okay, I'm convinced the coin is the best thing for me to generate a private key, but like, is a coin fair? Is any coin good to use? And another thing he did, he actually proved mathematically that it doesn't matter the weight of these things, which sounds crazy. It doesn't. The coin is still gotta be fair. So even if he took a coin and he put some wood on this side and put some metal on this one and started spinning it, and it still got 51-49, which is fine. So this is crazy because this is the best thing in the unit. This is the easiest thing to get. And no matter how bad a coin is, no matter where you get it from, you get it from a garbage kit or whatever, this is mathematically great for your Bitcoin private keys. So now I was onto something. I did the fucking first thing, and I was like, okay, now I know. Now I know 100%. Now I know like I'm gonna be paranoid. So this is what I'm supposed to use, okay? And I'm mathematically convinced that this is the case. Now, a coin cannot be loaded, but something that can, loaded means just modified in a small way that it could, change the outcomes. So a coin cannot be loaded, but you know what could be loaded actually? Dice, okay? And the thing is, like, dice are also a great symbol of randomness, and you're using casinos and everything. But the thing is, like, I don't know if you ever looked at a dice from up close, but I have. The thing is, like, this is the dice that I took a picture of. So just to get the idea, I have it here. I look like a grandma with this tiny die like this, I know. Just to get the idea, this dice that you're seeing here is this small. You can barely see it, right? It's how small this dice is. And the thing is, like, the reason why I picked this dice is this is the same one that Cold Card sends them to you if you want to buy it. So I was like, okay, I mean, I have to go all the way. I did a coin toss, like, see what's happening. So I started taking a picture of these things, and it's pretty obvious that, like, first of all, this isn't like a perfect square here, right? It's pretty obvious. And then there's like these holes over here, like, it's so clear the hole is uneven. And like, what is that dirt over there, Maybe that's my foot, actually. The people from the dice. But like, that clearly doesn't add away the weight. And even more so, the way dice are constructed, opposing sides have to equal to 7. So you have 1 on this side and 6 on this side. Literally, the most lightest side and the heaviest side, they're opposite with each other. And a lot of people say use dice to generate Bitcoin private keys. So I'm like, you know what, this doesn't really make any sense and whatever. So I started going really crazy. I wanted to measure dice rolls. But the thing is, like, if you start measuring dice to see a statistical significance, you have to do something around like 40,000 rows, 40K rows to see a bias very small. So then I was like, okay, I figured out, I found this guy who made this machine who tumbles dices and recognizing them with a picture, and he records this thing. So I was like, I tried contacting that guy, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. And then I was like, you know what? But what about casino dice? Casino dice actually are used in casinos, first of all. And I mean, if you can see this picture, they look pretty sharp, right? And another thing that is not always things, first of all, they are like clear. So you want to make sure there's no air bubbles or anything inside it. Another thing is like the pips, what they do is like they scoop out the hole, and then they take the same plastic with the same density and put it back there so it doesn't affect the weight, right? And then they're supposed to be a perfect geometrical shape, right? So, but now I started figuring out, like, I think even these things actually have imperfections and they could be affected, right? And then the thing is, like, how do you measure these dice? I mean, when you look compared to this, you can see these dice are imperfect. Like, just look at it, right? Like these ones you can still see imperfections, but here. By the way, I took these pictures, by the way. I really went the extra way, just so you know. So you can see these are imperfect. So the question now becomes like, is this safe to use for Bitcoin private keys? And then I started realizing that there's these things that measure them, and it's this one. But then I started going on these forums. There are these people in Las Vegas who say they can cheat dice because they're the only crazy people who look at dice to this detail. And then they said that actually this guy does have a bias because if it would be perfectly weighted, it wouldn't do that thing over there. So then there's this guy who had a special machine over there.
What thing? You mean it kind of ends up rolling, correcting itself at the end?
Yeah, if it would be perfectly weighted, it wouldn't correct it, so it would just stop perfectly. But then there's this machine over here, and I found this guy, I'm trying to contact him. I want this machine, it's a lot of money, but I have to get it. I did a quantum random generator. So I'm the entropy guy, I have to do it. But then one day, I decided to, ask Twitter, like, what do you think about this? And I say, how about this? Let's presume that a lot of people use cheap dice, like the ones in the picture, to generate Bitcoin private keys, right?
The first one's not the second.
The first one, yeah, the ones that had more colors, yeah. And let's say right now that, again, the assumption is that I said the holes the pips are really big, so this sits off the balance. So now how possible is it to crack the private keys, right? And there's actually this guy, Adam, and actually he wrote this thing here, and turns out that actually it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You can mathematically prove that it doesn't matter. That's what he did over here. So all this doesn't matter. The quantum random generator, I'll explain to you in a second. The quantum random generator, the dice and whatever, it doesn't matter. I was a moron. I should have just sit down and do them, instead of doing the math for the dice, I should have done the math for this. Now, why doesn't it matter, right? And that's actually a very good question. And I don't know how to answer this in a very non-technical way. So I'll try to do my best. And again, if something doesn't make sense, just stop. Now, in 1984, this guy called Claude Shannon.
48.
What did I say?
He said 84.
Oh, it's the same thing, come on. I mean, what's 50 years between friends, 1948, right? There's this guy called Claude Shannon, which again, another interesting character. This guy was a mathematician, and first of all, he used to juggle, and he used to build weird devices, like cookie devices and stuff like this, that had no purpose. Maybe that's why I like him. And besides that, he wrote this paper in 1948, that's called The Graphical Theory of Communication. It was a 55-page long paper, by the way. It's a fucking book, it's not a paper, I know. But he started thinking like this. He was like, in fact, by the way, in 1948, people really had a problem with communications. They barely started using phones properly. And the thing is, like, you'd have some information here, and you would send it to some other person, and they was like, how can we measure this to make sure this is the same information that gets from A to B? And he came up with this concept of entropy, okay? And now if we go back to the tweet, and entropy is a very big topic. I have a semi-technical post on my blog about what entropy is and whatever, but let's just go here. So first of all, the guy says that actually we need 80 bits to be secure. It's exactly what you're asking. Like, how many steps does it need to be between an attacker and the private keys? 2 to the power of 80. That's what 80-bit means, right? It's gonna be actually just wait a second here. So 2 to the power of 80 steps means 80 bits. And this is considered secure.
Maybe give people an idea what 2 to the 80 is.
Well, that's actually, now, what does 2
to the 10 is about 10 to the 3, so that's about 10 to the 3 to the 8, so that's about 10 to the 24, so it's a 1 with 24 zeros after it.
Well, I can't believe you did that, he said. It's 10 to the power of 24.
Yeah, so that would be what we billion. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's billions. It's not the number of atoms in the universe, but it's like it's something else. It's hard to put a number on.
So anyway, so this is how many steps we have over here, right? This is how many steps we need to be secure. Now the thing is, like, if we have a 12 word. Let's just go with the one that's less secure. Let's just say we have a 12-word seed, okay? This is gonna mean 128 bits. Why is it 128 bits? Because remember those spaces that we had earlier, like we have to put a 1 or a 0 here? We have 128 of this. That's what this means. Sure, that's what this means. 128 spaces, okay? So if 80 of them are okay, then we have a safe key. Okay, and the thing is, like, afterwards he explained that actually, if you actually boil down and you measure it, you're gonna realize that this is that even with an extreme bias in a coin or a dice or whatever, you're still gonna end up with this thing. And well, let's go to the other one because that one's probably gonna make a bit more sense. So he says here, let's say we have a coin, okay, and we toss it 128 times, and we wanna get a good key. Now, it so happens that this coin, even though we mathematically proved that it can't be done, let's say this coin has an extreme bias, like 20 to 80%, right? Now, the thing is, like, when you do this thing, when you do the math, this is still gonna result in 92 bits of entropy. And what is he writing over there? So the formula to calculate the entropy is pretty much like this. It's minus sum of pi log pi.
So this is
This was the non-technical
I mean, I really don't know how to explain this in a different way because this is how this is. I'm just hoping to scribble something here, and you guys like you did the math, so we're gonna do it. But the point is that this is the formula for the entropy. Okay, so when you look at a coin toss, you have an outcome that has so we have a bit here. Okay, we have this box.
Sorry, Alex, what's PI?
PI
It's
is
not
supposed to be.
pi, it's the probability at index I. So
Yeah,
something over index I, several different outcomes each with different probabilities.
Yes, yeah.
1, 2, 3, until you get it.
Sorry, so we have a coin toss right now, right? And we have heads and tails, okay? And in the good thing, this has a probability of 50-50, right? And this has the other 50% probability. It is 50%, that is true. Someone paid attention, that's very good. And now the thing is, like, if we use this formula here, okay, we can calculate how strong the entropy is, pretty much how strong the private key is, which is not completely accurate. So what we would do here in this scenario, we just have to have sum of the probability of heads. Actually, it's log of probability of heads plus log of probability of tails. Okay, and when you do these things together, these are going to end up to being pretty much 1, right? And the thing is, like, if we switch these probabilities around, let's say the probabilities are going to be now 80, 20, all right? And you do this calculation, this is going to end up being 0.8 or something. So the idea is that actually it doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter. Even if you have the worst coin in the world, no one followed it, I'm sorry. The basic idea is that because the private key is so big, it has 128 like boxes there, right? Even if you have something that has a really bad bias, like you have the worst coin in the world, 80-20, because there's so many of them, overall, it's gonna still make a secure key. So that's pretty much it. And then again, none of this mattered. And just to recap it, okay? So first of all, don't trust hardware wallets because it just told you, like, everyone is trying to get in there, and they probably are compromised and whatever. So why would you ever take that risk? Don't trust the software, which means you should kind of like flip coins and do all these things. And then it's gonna be don't trust the hardware, use general purpose computers. And bad dice or bad coins are still good enough. Okay, let's go. Now, okay, this is the finale. And one more thing. You're all gonna generate some different private keys with a coin just to see how easy it is. So let's get your coin here.
Can I do a small advertisement?
Yes, go on and do a small advertisement.
So I'm from Graphical, which is our platform.
You can do it, well, more people are gonna reach it actually if you do that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm from Graphical. We are a platform that sells gift cards. You can use Bitcoin, Ethereum, USDT, and stuff to buy gift cards like Amazon and so on. And we have like 5 of the $10 gift cards each tonight to give away.
So who's doing now? Huh?
Maybe you can do like a quiz or something to test.
So how many do we have?
5.
Randomness, it has to be complete randomness.
Well, yeah, it would have actually been the theme of the meetup to do it in random fashion. Okay, does anyone has any suggestion on how we